So thank you everybody for coming here today and fitting this into your schedule. We're here to talk about building our websites. We're going to have a discussion kick-off from David from Office Depot. I'll let him introduce himself. And then the main event is to chat with people around the table, swap stories. We might kick off some questions from now, time to time. But the main thing is to learn from each other how we can build our websites so they end up with a bit of a wow factor. Over to you then, David. Thank you.
A little bit about what we're doing. So I work for the Digital Innovation Centre in Milton Keynes, which is part of the Office Depot group. Now, we were part of Office Depot Incorporated, which was an American-owned company. We were sold to a private equity called Aurelius, a German company, in January. As part of that sale, all of Europe and our markets have been sold, and we have something that I wasn't aware of in my career up until now, was something called a transition service agreement or a carve-out. So it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. So we actually use the United States Office Depot now becomes our supplier for lots of processes and services and license agreements. And so we now have an interesting opportunity to look at all of those agreements, decide whether we want to sign a new contract with the same vendor, go with a completely different vendor. It's interesting for us because we're now much bigger than the parent, so some of those contracts are good for us and some of them perhaps aren't. The journey we were already on as part of that was in all of our European markets, we had different code bases, potentially different experiences for our websites, for our online customers. We potentially had different operational support teams, we had different marketing and sales teams, and so those customer experiences were slightly different. Not a huge issue potentially, because if I'm an Austrian customer on the Austrian website, wouldn't potentially use the Swiss website. From a business point of view, from a scalability, from a consistency, from a cost point of view, it perhaps didn't feel like the right thing. So what this slide is starting to show is we chose, obviously looked at the Gartner quadrant like a lot of companies do, and SAP Hybris was up at top right. We've looked at the offering of SAP and looked at our own feature set and decided that that was the platform that we were going to use. And so we are a couple of years into a journey to take us from all of our sites being quite disparate to all being on a central scalable platform. What this is showing us is the white boxes are basic features that we would need. The green is when we brought the Austrian market onto the platform, so additional features that we needed for Austria. The blue is the same for Germany, and the purple is the United Kingdom. Now, what this is showing us as a business is we're building a common feature set. So actually, for a very basic country or Austria, they're now inheriting or can choose to inherit lots of features that the United Kingdom had. So we're seeing great economy of scale for us, all on a single platform. We've also now got the challenge of, this is for the Viking brand. So that's another thing to add. We're Office Depot, but you may be familiar with Viking. Viking tends to be more B2C and smaller B2B customers. Office Depot is more of a closed portal, tier one, contract-based experience. And we're trying to bring both brands and all markets onto the same platform. So that's given us some challenges, some technical ones. We're using this as an opportunity to work with our customers, work with our sales and marketing teams, and truly challenge all of the things we do currently. We've got an awful lot of complexity in our business, and we're really questioning through the digital experience. Now, we want to be, particularly for Viking, online first, mobile first. Our customers find us hopefully through organic SEO, Google. They come to us, have a great experience buying online, and they can self-serve online. If they contact us, it's in more of a proactive way, not a reactive way. And so we have to try and reduce as much complexity in our business process as we possibly can. You know, the way that we price our products, the way that we source our products, the way that we market our products, looking at all of the tools that we have, and I'll mention some of them later, but we have been able to invest in some fantastic tools. We've got UserBiller, 4C, MouseFlow, some really interesting tools from an online point of view to make sure we're getting real-time customer feedback and being able to react to it. We've got another tool called Thunderhead, which is a phenomenal tool. That brings in online and offline. We're quite lucky with our B2B customers. Typically, they log in. We can track them online and we can track them offline. So if customers are having to call our contact center to place an order or to query something, we can find why that was through the data, and we can try and improve the online experience to make sure that they don't need to. So, all of that challenge in mind. We've had a challenging year, so we're going through the process of, it's almost business as usual rollout now. So we've got that huge feature set. All of the subsequent markets will inherit all of those great features, and we're into a bit of a rollout mode. We've then been on to thinking about the scalability and the performance. So every time we bring over a new European market, it's amazing that they inherit all of those features, but how's the platform going to react? How much traffic are we bringing over? We're trying to now find our bottlenecks in the application and in the customer experience. So, as I say, we get lots of great feedback from our customers and we have to be reacting to it. Frustratingly for us, we still get customers saying the website is too slow. We're proud of our new platform, we're proud of our experience, but it can be better. If customers are saying it's slow, it's slow. And so we need to make sure that we're making improvements to making sure that we're looking at the right data. You know, we can look at server logs and stack traces, and we can look at the server performance. But actually, what technologies are we using that the customer's interacting with? I talked about mouse flow and usability and 4C. We have Monotape for personalization. We use rich relevance. Amazing tools that build an amazing experience. But if they're making our website slower, the page isn't going to load as a customer would expect, and they're going to leave. They won't feel that personalization and that amazing experience. So we're having to not get too excited with the technology, but bear in mind the impact that's having on the customer, positive and negative. Some research from Mobify, and again, something to keep us aware all the time. Even the smallest change in performance can make a huge impact on our conversion rates. I would absolutely have a 1.55% increase in our conversion. So they're saying, you know, for every 100 milliseconds we can take out of loading time, then we can hopefully see an increase in our conversion. We're seeing in this diagram here, again, probably common sense, but the better your website performs, the more customers engage with it, and you know, the more they browse through the site, they engage with different content. Again, there's no point having all of this personalization and rich content if customers are only getting 1 or 2 steps into the journey and then abandoning. So yeah, just to bed that in really, the data is suggesting we have to keep a close eye on performance. You know, and ultimately it has a financial impact. We have to be aware that we don't get too caught up in the technology, too caught up in the tools. We have to constantly be aware what's the customer saying and what's the experience like. We had a few interesting conversations with Google actually. So we're quite lucky in the Digital Innovation Centre. We have recruited people with lots of amazing experience. We're working very well with other departments and other offices to make sure that we're building expertise for digital. And we had an interesting conversation with Google because naturally we brought Google in as the experts. They did a user experience review of our site, and we asked them to give us some recommendations for improvement, of which they gave us nearly 100. And it was interesting, again, back to mindset, because there were some people who said, right, Google have said, here's a project, go and deliver 88 changes, and then we will be better. And there were some of us that said, based on our experience, you know, we've tested that before, happy to test it again. This doesn't really work for our business. This probably is a hypothesis, we should test it. And we were seen as being a little bit difficult because we were wanting a conversation, we were wanting to experiment, we were wanting to test, not just take it as read that Google says and we'll be better. And we actually started to challenge Google because with the SAP Hybris platform, we've got a fully responsive mobile experience. It's mobile first. With all of the breakpoints that we have now, it is a good experience on mobile. And yet we're not seeing the organic SEO benefits that we were expecting. So we put some challenge back on Google as well. You know, you say fast loading time on mobile first. We'll take the loading times, we can do better. But actually we need to understand, they can't tell us what the algorithm does, that's part of the fun. But have that collaboration with Google that, how do we work together rather than just being told, make these changes, please. So everybody's probably heard of the Agile Manifesto, hopefully, and the Agile values. This is the first principle. So delivering early and continuously. So we have, like a lot of organizations, tried to deliver code to production, features to customers more frequently. And we at the moment are on a 2-week cadence. So we work in Scrum, we work in sprints, we deliver new features every couple of weeks. That's amazing. And I've been to some conferences where people say they can put code into production in 90 seconds. Very impressive. Continuous delivery, continuous integration is what we aim for, which gives us freedom to decide what we put into production and how we market and sell it to our customers. So that's great. We're trying to remove the technical barriers, and that's really important. But we have to keep an eye on the customer. We're not going to throw features at customers every day. You're going to probably confuse the experience. But also, and we've had this debate internally, how do you measure quality? And we talk about bug rates and technical debt and unit test coverage and all those sorts of things. Customers determine quality. And so whilst everybody has a responsibility, whilst everybody can contribute, unit test coverage is important for our engineers. Automated testing is important to remove costly manual checks out of our process. But making sure we're getting those feedback loops from customers is fundamental. There's no point us putting a new feature out and customers not using it or not knowing how to use it. So it's just understanding how you talk about quality in your business. And again, a bug, once we've had another interesting conversation, is there any such thing as a bug? Because if we're sat here today talking about something doesn't quite work how we expect, if you're putting that out to customers, you're accepting that bug. And again, we used to talk about known issues, so have a known issues database. The language is slightly different, but it's the same thing. The customer will decide if it's quality or not quality. We're on a very similar journey to lots of organizations. We're trying to move away from the monolith. So all of our systems and integrations completely tangled together. 9-month projects where we have to deploy everything together, many, many months of testing, lots of risk. We're, like a lot of teams, in the middle now, so talking a lot more about service-orientated architecture and looser coupling. Our teams do work independently, so I look after our checkout team. We make changes independently to our search team and independently to our returns team. But we still have a couple of days every sprint where we do integration testing. So we don't have 100% confidence that when we plug all the application parts back in, something's not going to go bang. And so we are now starting to talk about microservices. So a guy called Martin Fowler, I believe, has written books now on microservices. And really, we're starting to think about what is it we want to be good at. So we talk a lot about projects and change and features and backlogs. But fundamentally, what is it we want to be good at? And that's always an interesting question to ask. What's our unique selling point? Are we search specialists? What is it fundamentally that our website does that's different from anybody else? It's been interesting for us. We're taking SAP Hybris. We're trying to take as much out of the box as possible. What makes us different? Why would somebody use our website? I haven't got the answers to that at the moment, but that helps shape your microservices thinking. If we're going to invest time in a service that everyone around the business can consume, search for a lot of businesses is that fundamental thing. We want to be good at search. Somebody can't find something they're looking for, they're going to leave. And if we actually sell it, that's disastrous. So it's trying to think more about teams as services that other departments can use and providing a good quality service to other products, other applications. So this is something Henrik Nieberg put together. You may have seen on YouTube. Google Henrik Nieberg if you haven't before. He's a really interesting guy. Used to work with Spotify. He talks a lot around Agile and their adoption of Agile and his views on product ownership. Now for me, when we talk about product ownership and we talk about projects, it's about breaking mindsets again. So there's nothing wrong with projects. I work with a lot of people who say no such thing as projects anymore and we don't estimate anything anymore. And I've sat in a number of meetings where we will sit and say, well, we're agile and we can't tell you when it's going to be ready, which is horribly unrealistic. We have to have some expectation as to what's the window of opportunity, what's the return on investment we're looking for. But what we're trying to break is the project mindset. Typically, a project mindset used to be success was delivering the scope in the agreed time with the agreed cost. And that was success. And the project team would deliver on the date it said it would. It would spend less money, hopefully, than it said it would. And it would deliver probably a reduced scope because the time and the cost became more important than the scope. And everybody's unhappy. Because again, typically, you've probably asked for a little bit more money. You've cut scope out that was probably quite important. And the project team then moves on. And so product is about bringing us closer to the customer, about success being the impact that the change has and being there to see that impact. So projects aren't bad. Projects are a group focusing on making change, but it's being around long enough to understand the impact of that change and hopefully iterate on it. But yeah, all the typical things are still there. We still talk about risk. We call it impediments, but it's the same thing. We try and front load risk. So if anybody's got an assumption or a risk, we start to call it a hypothesis. So rather than defining 100 changes in a specification document, giving it to IT and expecting it delivered, and then a month before we're due to go live being asked to cut out things, it's trying to think about from the very beginning, where do we see the most value? Where do we see the most risk? And trying to prioritize and order things based on those things. If anybody's read The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, that again is a fascinating book. For anyone who's in IT or in DevOps, It's really, really interesting view without using Agile and Lean necessarily as the language. It's talking about Agile and Lean. It's talking about systems thinking. So not different departments doing small tasks and not really understanding how it represents the whole. It's systems thinking, actually. Who is the customer? What is the change we're looking to make? And how do we all work together to make sure it's successful? It's talking about feedback loops. So again, it's understanding if I do something that makes you more inefficient, then it makes the whole process more inefficient, and we should probably work together to figure out where that waste is. And it's this continual experimentation and learning. So there's always a way to do something better, and it's having that language and that conversation that we can always improve. Similarly, from a Lean point of view, Lean defines value through the eyes of the customer. Everyone thinks of Lean as waste, as redundancy. It's absolutely not that. It's being focused on the customer. The customer, again, defines what value is. We always used to say, if you phoned a customer right now and told them what you're doing, would they be happy that that's potentially in the cost of the product or service they're buying from you? The answer is no. If you're producing a document and you don't know who it's for, or you don't know what that person uses it for, then you should probably question why. I think we've all got a responsibility to make sure we're delivering the best value to the customer and to the business. And so it's having that mindset again, that I understand why this is important, and also, is there a better way for me to do this? So it's having that continual, even, as we said at the beginning, even 100 milliseconds, even that smallest change can have a huge impact on the business. So don't be afraid of, Lean talks about Kaizen. Everyone may have heard the phrase Kaizen, and it talks about Kaikaku. So it understands the difference between a very small change, continuous change, and very big change. And it's the importance of having them both together. And again, the smallest change makes a huge difference. In Toyota, they actually task through objectives their staff to come up with, I think it's a couple of Kaizens a month. Across their whole workforce, that's thousands of them. They're not going to implement them all, but it's about the thought process that goes into why that change would make a difference to the customer. So just on changing mindsets, I think one of the journeys we've been on is seeing performance testing as somebody else's concern. It's something that the ops team do. They'll tell us if there's a problem, and seeing it very much as an annual thing. So when I've worked in some other retailers, we would, in the early days, we would very much panic. We would get to August and panic because we didn't really understand the traffic we were expecting, and we didn't really have confidence that the system was going to hold up. And we would be in November talking about which things we shut down and switch off, and it's not a particularly good situation to be in. We've moved that more as we evolved into an ongoing conversation, an ongoing, probably still was referred to as a project, and a project that was probably 9 months in length, not 12, but it was an earlier conversation. It was trying to be a little bit more predictable, trying to bring in some tools around virtual users and virtual experiences, and properly load, stress, and soak testing our applications, which was a fantastic improvement. With the DevOps mindset, again, that's moving on to, it's everybody's responsibility. If you're a development team and you're building a new feature, you have a responsibility to understand whether that, the operability, the maintainability, the scalability, the security, it's everybody's concern. It's not something you pass off, and if it doesn't work in production, well, I didn't have the right environment or the right tools. It's having that conversation early. We talk a lot about shift left, and performance testing is something that we've tried to shift left. We're now talking about when a particular Scrum team has a feature branch, so a branch of code where they put their features on before they integrate them with anything else around the organization, they find a way to performance test that feature. So again, it's everybody taking responsibility for, do I think I'm going to cause a problem or not? Do I understand? And again, it needs to be a positive conversation. I talked about bundles earlier on. Some of the tools, user experience and marketing tools we've plugged in, we want to use them. And so we have to understand the impact on performance and solve it together. It's not you plug that in and it caused a problem, so switch it off, please, because there's value in the tools that we're using. Just to mention some of the tools that we're using. So user stories is something that we use. Again, with user stories, we've seen, on the right-hand side, we talk about bringing in rules, and I like specification by example. We have given, when, then acceptance criteria. We sometimes see acceptance criteria like this, and we see it written before we give it to the team. So again, remember it's about behavior and it's about mindset. User stories the intent of them was customer focus. Understand the problem we're solving for the customer. and have it as something very brief that becomes a promise for a conversation with your development and engineering teams. And we've struggled a little bit with some of our engineers didn't like an abstract conversation, they wanted detail. We wanted speed, so we didn't want to be procrastinating in a room for a day about the best way to solve the problem. You need to find a happy medium there. Again, don't be prescriptive, give your team the opportunity to solve problems together, but always put it in the context of the customer. Again, with personas, that's something else we've tried to bring in. Whatever change we're making, we understand the customer type we're aiming it for. Sometimes things we build will be amazing for a younger customer and harder to understand for a different demographic. So again, it's bringing those things into mind, understanding what we're measuring and which persona we're targeting. So for me, just to finish off, some of the important things to take away with you, speed really does matter for conversion. It's not everybody else's concern, it's everybody's concern. We need to bear that in mind and be testing performance and scalability as early as possible. That has a direct knock-on onto search engine optimization. We see organic traffic from Google as a fundamental part of our business, and so performance is something we're always talking about. Another interesting conversation we have, if features are not valued, remove them. We're talking about putting a feature in, understanding the impact, and iterating on it. If customers don't value it, then take it out, because otherwise you've got complexity when there doesn't need to be. We talked about the re-platform and trying to remove complexity in our business process. That's often where it comes from. You put something and it doesn't work, and you leave it in there. Mindset is key. I can't talk about mindset enough. That continuous improvement mindset is absolutely phenomenal, and the agile and DevOps and lean movements, that's what it's all about, customer focus and continuous improvement. If anybody isn't familiar with Agile Manifesto, go and have a look. Look up Henrik Nieberg. He's done some really interesting YouTube videos around this. And embrace customer-focused activity. I mentioned user stories. There's something else called body storming, where you actually pretend to be the customer and you're speaking with the customer. It's about the customer. It's about the customer experience. So we talk about customer focus, and then the way the teams work and the way we measure them isn't customer focus. So everything we measure, everything we talk about, keep the customer front of mind. Thank you.